Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is the not so fun video, but it's definitely something that was important to share with everyone. It's my experience with my cervical ectopic pregnancy. You know anyone who's going through something like that, or has a loved one who's gone through it? This is just my story, and if I can help someone out just to clear some questions out of their mind, I would love to be that person. So it's still all was very confusing. I gotta say, I had never heard about a cervical ectopic pregnancy before. I really thought there's only one type of an ectopic pregnancy, and that's always in your fallopian tube. That's the typical one that I'd heard. I never thought of looking into anything like that. You just know that basic information. You know, when you're pregnant, they tell you if your left or right side hurts, it's excruciating pain, you have an ectopic pregnancy. So that's the only one type that I knew. And I didn't think that I was going to be that person with the rarest form of an ectopic pregnancy. A cervical ectopic pregnancy is very, very rare. It's less than 1% of the women. So it so happened that it was me. So it's all started with that 1 month when, I told my husband, I think I'm pregnant, and I had experienced a miscarriage the year before that, and so when we found out about this, we thought, oh my gosh, this is awesome. We're super happy, and this wasn't going to be nothing but a positive thing in our lives. So because I had a miscarriage in the past, my doctor wanted to go ahead and start monitoring early, which I am so glad and so blessed that that happened, because if we didn't catch this in time, things would have not been the best, or they would have not been this smooth. I found out that I was pregnant, made my doctor's appointment. The plan was I was going to start doing blood work every 2 days to make sure that my HCG levels were increasing. So HCG, if you don't know, is that pregnancy hormone that gives us that beautiful line on a pregnancy test, and that's what pretty much detects that you're pregnant. And we had to make sure that the HCG levels were doubling. That's what they're supposed to do. They are supposed to double every 2 days. Now, we did that, and everything was going great. And then all of a sudden, one day, one of those blood tests, my doctor called me back and said, it didn't double, and that was concerning. So we said, okay. We decided we were going to try 2 days later, and it just increased very slightly. So the doctor said, all right, come in for an ultrasound. We're going to do an early ultrasound. At that point, I already knew something was wrong. I think it was that deep down fear, because I had a miscarriage in the past. And I was like, okay, this is not looking so great, but let's see what it does. Ended up going for my ultrasound, and I'm staring at the screen because I'm like, oh my gosh, I just got to see something. You're trying to figure out every little fluid bubble or something. You're trying to be that ultrasound tech all of a sudden, and, trying to read everything. But the tech says to me, I don't see anything in the uterus. And at that point, I'm like, okay, I'm pregnant, right? Like, the pregnancy test says yes, the HCG levels are saying yes. So where did it go? They didn't see anything, and she didn't catch the cervical ectopic. She said, we just don't see anything in the ultrasound, and sent me to the other room, and she said, the doctor's going to come and talk to you. My doctor wasn't there that day, so I ended up talking to another doctor who was there. She said, all right, what we're doing is we're going to send you to the high risk tomorrow. Pretty much her fear was, it's either a miscarriage or it's an ectopic, a cervical ectopic. And she said that, but we weren't sure that it was going to be a cervical ectopic. So they ended up sending me, they said, all right, you're good to go, and then tomorrow you're gonna go first thing in the morning, you're gonna go to the high risk. I said, all right, let's do this. Super confused. I didn't know what to think at that time. It's weird because at that point, like, there's a million things going through your mind. Having a baby is, I think, the best thing in the world. It's the nicest, it's the happiest moment, it's the happiest feeling. And when things go wrong, it's you're just confused, especially when people don't have the exact answers for you. So I um, ended up, I was almost about ready to leave their office, and I started spotting. Well, that spotting turned to bleeding. And I thought, okay, this is exactly what they were talking about. I just miscarried. So I said, all right, I think, I miscarried. The doctor said, go home, rest, and go to your appointment tomorrow. Um, I got home, and at that point, I'm just devastated because I think that, I miscarried. And for a good half an hour, I noticed that I was bleeding very heavily. Now, that was concerning because I looked at my husband and I said, this is not how the last miscarriage was. And he said, okay, let's wait and see what happens. And then we go to the ER if anything goes wrong, or, if you feel things are still not getting better. So from there, so things did get better, and I stopped bleeding and I was able to just rest. And I thought, okay, the appointment's tomorrow and let's see how that goes. But I remember that morning I was in excruciating pain at that point, and that was weird because I just didn't understand why this was happening. It was all so different. It was all so I was very confused. I was very emotional. I was very confused. I didn't know what was going on. And I remember taking a hot water bottle, putting it on my belly, and that's how we ended up going. They asked me what my due date is, and I told them, I don't have a due date. I'm having a miscarriage. And they said, we're so sorry, but you're still gonna have to write a due date in here. And I did. And so when my turn came around, they're doing an ultrasound, and the girl says to me, she's like, you know what, we're gonna take you into the 3D ultrasound room, and the doctor will be there. And I said, okay. So the doctor does the ultrasound, and all of a sudden I'm hearing the heartbeat. And that totally, I don't know, that just like shook me off my ground. I said, what is that? And they said, the heartbeat. So they're looking at each other, they're talking about it. They're like, yep, close up, that's the heartbeat right there. That's the baby's heartbeat. And I just was like, wait a minute. I thought I was having a miscarriage. Where did the baby come from? Well, sure enough, they showed me that the baby was implanted at the cervix, and there was a heartbeat, and the heartbeat was on the slower side. So this in its own was a shock. I couldn't believe what was just happening. And my husband was not with me because of the whole COVID situation. You can't bring anyone with you. You're supposed to be in there alone. And so, of course, at a time like this, you can't even be with your spouse, or you can't be with that person, or a loved one or someone. So I sat there in that room. That felt like the longest wait. They told me to go into a room and sit there and wait for the doctor to come talk to me. And the first question she came to me and said was, this is a case of a cervical ectopic pregnancy. Do you want to have more kids? And I said, yes, that's what the plan was, And she's like, okay, because we need to send you to the ER right now. And I'm texting my husband. I'm bawling my eyes out. I'm crying sitting in that room. And he can't come inside. I can't see him. And that's the worst thing for me. That probably was the worst thing for me. And in the morning when I left the house, I didn't even really get to say goodbye to my kids or anything. I thought I'd just finish my ultrasound and be back home. My parents were at home, and really I thought it was just going to be another doctor's appointment, but everything just turned into commotion. They said, we're calling the ER downstairs. We're gonna rush you in there, and I don't think you should go home. You should go straight to the ER. All I remember is crying through my mask, trying to breathe so hard because, of course, that mask, you can't really breathe with it anyways. And I was just like, this is not happening. And I just remember, like, I don't know, I was numb, So that point, my husband finally said, you know what, let's just go. Are you fine? And I said, yes, I'm fine, and I really need to have you with me. And he said, you know what, we're gonna rush to another hospital, which was, you know, the one that we normally go to, and which was, I think, pretty much my comfort zone too. So I ended up just finally being able to see him was the best thing ever. And we looked at each other, and I'm like, you know, just to be able to tell him what exactly happened, just to be able to say, oh my gosh, you know, just to even absorb that information and deal with it together, you know. So we ended up going to the hospital, and thank God he was able to be there with me. He was there with me the whole time, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without him. So we ended up going in the hospital. They said, all right, you know, we're going to take you in, get you registered in the ER. And they gave us, the previous place gave us paperwork to take with us. And that's the first thing that we showed them. So they took me in, and oh my gosh, the IV story was a disaster because I have really messed up veins. My veins want to act really funny in situations like these. They can't get an IV on me. So I think my veins just end up popping, or they're too small or something, or they say, I know they keep saying they just rolled, you know. So they ended up finally someone came in, got an IV in my hand. I was pretty bruised up, but pretty much from there, we were just waiting for someone to tell us, what's the plan? What are we gonna do? Am I taking a medication, or, you know, what's happening? So the biggest fear, let me tell you, in a situation like this, in a cervical ectopic, or any other type of ectopic, I guess, but a cervical ectopic specifically, is that if things go wrong and you start bleeding like that, they have to do a hysterectomy. That's when I was like, so that's the reason why the doctor asked me if I wanted to have more children, because if not, then that was the plan. So finally getting all settled into the ER room. Now they were waiting to inform my OB and my doctor, you know, my primary physician. And so I'm just pretty much, it was a waiting game. So the ER doctor came to me and he said, all right, what's going on? And I said, you know, this is what happened, and what's the plan now? And every person I spoke to pretty much said, you know, this is a very rare situation. We really haven't dealt with stuff like this before. So a group of doctors sitting there and discussing this. Now, hearing something like that, you freak out because you know, you're so used to going into a hospital and the doctor saying to you, here's the plan, this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing, step 1, step 2, step 3, and boom, you're fine. But this was like, oh my gosh, they really haven't dealt with this before. Am I gonna be okay? Before all of this, I want to tell you that when I tried to Google this, all you see is papers written on it, or you see, if I tried to YouTube it or Google it, all you saw was like horrific images of like surgeries and ovaries and uteruses, and, you know, just stuff that you're just kind of like, whoa, you know. So I really tried to stay away from that, and I didn't want to research it because I didn't want to get more freaked out than I already was. And my husband made sure that I wasn't Googling myself to death, you know. So there was really nothing for me to see or to understand. Wish there was someone to, you know, even say that, you know, it's going to be fine, or this is what a cervical ectopic pregnancy is. Or I guess it's one of those things, if you see a normal, just a woman or someone sitting there sharing their story about what happens in a situation like this, what happened with them, it still makes you feel a little better, as opposed to watching scary images of like surgeries and, you know, all of that. The doctor came around and they said, we're going to send you for another ultrasound. So this was my second ultrasound because it was a different hospital. They said, we want to make sure it's a cervical ectopic pregnancy before we come up with a game plan. They did an ultrasound. Again, they saw the heartbeat. I think that was the toughest part, to see the heartbeat. I think that was the hard part. was established again that it is a cervical ectopic pregnancy. The plan was to take methotrexate shots and leucovorin. I think I'm saying it right. So we said, okay, and they said methotrexate shots are like a low dose, a very low dose form of chemo. So I'm looking at my husband's face and going like, what, everything seems scary at that point, like, but this is, if you ever hear that, if you're going through something like this and you hear methotrexate and they tell you it's a form of chemo, just remember that's the lowest form, lowest dose, the kind of medication they use in chemo. That's what it is. And this is a typical medication that they use in any sort of ectopic pregnancy. So they told me that, and they said, but it might affect your liver, so every other day we're going to give you leucovorin with it. I said, okay. So that was another shot. I hate needles. The only time I happily do it is if, I'm pregnant and I have to go do like blood work because, of course there's a baby at the end of it. But I don't like needles. I don't like shots. I don't like it all, any of it. So they said it was going to be shots, and we said, okay. So we came back to our room. At this point, I broke down. I was crying constantly. Like, it was, I think for hours and hours. Like, I had like a swollen face just from crying the whole entire time. But again, thank God my husband was with me. And that just was comforting. I couldn't see my kids. That was terrible. I just wanted to see them one time. But thank God for, to have family around. Like, that's something that if you have good family and friends and a good support system, everything gets a lot better. So I had amazing family and friends. I was so blessed to have that. And, they supported in every way, in every way they could. Anything. My kids were taken care of, things, with our work or anything that needed to be taken care of, things were taken care of. So we were lucky there. Again, I thought about people. I just wondered, what if someone didn't have family or friends? What if they didn't know anyone? Like, what do you do in that situation, right? So in that aspect, everything was taken care of. So we waited patiently till my doctor came. And at this point, I'm still thinking, all right, they're going to give me a shot. I'm going to go home and I'm going to be back in my bed with my kids. Our doctor came around, told us, she told us the whole plan again and all of that. And at this point, we're like, okay, so how long do we have to be here? Tops, we're thinking maybe tonight, She goes, you're going to have to stay here for a week. And oh my God, that just felt like something shot me all over again. And I'm like, no way. There's no way. For a whole week, I'm going to be in the hospital. But that's what it was. Of course, I started crying all over again, and it was just not fun. Every time I heard my kids talk on the phone, I heard their voice, I looked at their pictures, and I was like, just devastated. I was devastated. Let alone being in the situation. Every other nurse I saw, or someone, I saw at least a good 10 pregnant ladies over this whole week. And it was just crazy. It was like the haunting of the pregnancy. But it was crazy because there was just so much to wrap your head around it. And honestly, I just knew that I had to get better and go home for my kids. So usually in a typical ectopic pregnancy of a tubal or something, they'll give you maybe a shot or two and then send you home. And they don't keep you in the hospital like this. But because my situation was pretty much a life and death situation, that's how extreme it was. I could hemorrhage any time. That's what their concern was. And that's why they had to monitor me so, strongly. It was 4 shots, so it was methotrexate, leucovorin. They wanted the heartbeat to eventually go away, and they said what methotrexate does is that it'll eventually dissolve most of the pregnancy, the cells, and pretty much or expel whatever it needs to. Again, one good thing was that the positioning of where it was in the cervix, it was very close to the external os, they call it, so pretty close to the opening. So I was lucky that way. I don't know. I mean, you know, in a situation like this, you still got to look at the bright side. It could have been placed way, you know, higher or to the sides, and that would have been more complicated. But they did monitor my blood levels, like, you know, my hemoglobin, and they wanted to make sure I don't get anemic from, you know, blood loss or anything. My levels stayed perfectly fine. Through this whole time over there, I was constantly spotting. So I was not heavily bleeding, but for the whole week that I was there, I was constantly spotting, or I would say very light bleeding. So that again is something normal. As long as the heartbeat was gone and my HCG levels completely dropped, then we knew that, you know, the plan worked and I'm good to go home. So that's what we waited for. Now, the day the treatment started, the next day they checked my HCG levels again, and my levels actually increased slightly. Oh my gosh, I was devastated all over again. So I cried all over again, and I was like, this is not happening. Instead of the levels dropping, how did they increase? So with the HCG levels rising all of a sudden like that, the doctor said that is normal. That happens with pregnancies, and I know that happened with my miscarriage too. When I had the miscarriage, and they were monitoring my HCG levels, they basically wanted to go below 1, right? Below 5, they wanted, that's like good. And then of course they wanted to come down to 0. But once it's below 5, you're good. That happened with my miscarriage as well, where my HCG levels did rise for a little bit and then they went down. And that's what happened here. So they had told me it was normal, but of course in my brain it was not normal. I didn't want to be in that situation. Well, they said, you know, we're going to try to put the shot in a different muscle. And they, you know, they did something which was, again, I know this is a lot of detailed information, but this video is probably not for everyone, but this video is for someone who's going through something like this, really wants to know all those details, you know. And this is something, like I said, I would want to know everything. You know, I'm that person who wants to be aware of things, wants to know things, that helps me prepare better. So you know, what they did is the next time the nurse came in, she said, you know, the pharmacist said to break this shot down into 2 separate shots, which means 2 needles, and they had to put it under my muscle for a minute both times, and that was what they did. Again, like I said, I got it in both my thighs every time, so they all, you know, they would alternate the thighs, and it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad at all, you know. It's just that first poke that's kind of like, I'm not ready for this, and then once the shot is in there, you're just pretty much waiting for it to get out. So the whole time, okay, the craziest part, as soon as I was admitted, I didn't even have breakfast that morning, and I went straight to the ER, and I wasn't allowed to eat. They didn't give me any food. They were like, nope, you're supposed to just pretty much fast. And why they wanted me to do that was, God forbid, they had to rush me into surgery. They didn't want me to have a full stomach. So of course, that's another thing where you're like, oh my gosh, this is some crazy stuff. So they did that. The second day, I know I started getting like migraines from being hungry for so long. And I told them, I really need to have something. And they said, sure, you know what? The doctor just allowed you some clear diet, so go ahead. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, yes. So I grabbed the menu and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna order. Of course, what do we have on there? It is clear diet and more liquid, just like, you know, I could have Sprite, I could have broth, and that broth was just water. But it was a lot better than not eating anything at all or just staying on ice chips. So, you know, I just took that as the yummiest meal ever, and I dealt with it. But things were looking good in 2 days, and they started letting me have some soft diet. And, you know, as the days progressed and the levels slowly started coming down, you know, they thought, okay, you're doing good. My levels, my blood levels were fine. Those are the flags, red flags that they look for. Your blood levels, your hemoglobin, your bleeding, how much are you bleeding, the heartbeat, the HCG levels, and all of those things were on the slower side, but they were looking good. So uh, a week was, I can tell you, that felt like the longest week of my life, and it was just devastating not being able to see my kids. The, I couldn't imagine not holding them or not hugging them or kissing them and just playing with them. That's all I imagined all day long. And of course, I think what kept me going through this time was praying. So, we had a lot of people pray with us, and family and friends again, and people sending me different scriptures and stuff. And I mean, it was that point where we're just like, okay, God's going to take care of it. You come to that point. The situation was so serious. Of course, now that I sit here and talk about it 7 months later, it sounds so much, easier to talk about, but it was not great. I did ask the doctor, I'm like, so do we know how this happens? They said, nope, there's no explanation for it. It can just happen. It's something that's a chance. It can happen to anyone. And that's when they told me that ectopic pregnancies. So ectopic pregnancy means any pregnancy out of the uterus. So that's what ectopic pregnancy is. Where that ectopic pregnancy happens is really, I guess, up to the pregnancy's brain. Like, I don't know. It could happen in the cervix. It could happen in the stomach. It could happen in a fallopian tube. I didn't even know that. When the doctor told me, she's like, it's even possible to happen in the abdomen. And I'm like, okay, all right. I guess, what do you say? So, that's what happened. And then of course, from the soft diet, as my levels kept going down, they start letting me eat a little bit more, but the methotrexate shots did make me really nauseous, so I didn't really have a great appetite. So on the 6th day, they did another ultrasound and checked my HCG levels again. My HCG levels definitely came down, and not close to where they wanted it to be, but it dropped significantly. And when they did the ultrasound, they saw that the heartbeat was gone, and the pregnancy looked like it did shrink a little. So, it was one of those things that was the ideal situation. That's exactly where we wanted to be. Now, I don't know if I mentioned in my video in the beginning, I didn't mention that my pregnancy was only 6 weeks and 3 days. So only because of my previous miscarriage is the doctors started, my OB started monitoring it this early. So again, like I said, in this situation, that was awesome, worked out great, because if it was pushed any longer, because in any pregnancy, the typical ultrasound, the first ultrasound they'll do is at 8 weeks. And if I was to wait 8 weeks, things would have been terrible. So, that's what they did. That's where I was. Just in case anyone's wondering how far along I was, it was 6 weeks and 3 days. Once they saw that the ultrasound looked good, and the HCG levels dropped, they said, you know what, things are looking good. So at this point, usually we send you home. So I was like, yes, I'm going home today, and they said, yep, but we're not going to send you home today. We're going to give you another methotrexate shot. Then the next day, we're going to give you a leucovorin shot, and then you can go home. So I had to wait till the next day. And it was not fun, but guess what? They finally gave me a discharge date. And of course, I wanted to be safe too. So that was the whole, treatment in my cervical ectopic. Just in case anyone's wondering why they couldn't do a DNC, is because the baby was in the cervix. Now, this baby was implanted in the cervix. And if they were to do anything to get in there and try to do a DNC or do anything, and if God forbid, even if the slightest, tiniest nerve got damaged or moved, I could have just started to bleed and they wouldn't be able to stop it. If you're going through something like this, just remember, these are your options. You don't have to opt for that first thing. If someone tells you, you want to be informed about what your options are, unless, you know, it's extremely important to go into a hysterectomy or surgery, or, you know, they rush you. It's always good to know that that's not the first outcome. You don't end up, because it's such a rare thing and not too many people have posted this on, you know, social media, or it's not a very known topic. That's the only reason why I wanted to make sure that I put this on there, because again, like I said, I wish when I was going through this, I heard someone say these things to me. But if you have the right doctor, you have the right team of doctors, you are in good hands at a hospital, and you are, you know, aware of what's going on with you, you are informed about what all these things are, you should be fine. You will be fine. And I think once it gets done, then it's really more healing yourself emotionally, and you know, it's just one of those things. You have to just, it takes time, and you'll be fine. This happened to me in August, and here I am 7 months later. So I've been wanting to make this video for a long time, but I finally got around to it, and I was able to talk with a straight face. And you know, if you have any questions for me, please feel free to comment down below, and I will try to answer whatever I know out of my experience, not as medical advice, but from what I went through. This is my story, you know. I just want to let you know, if you're going through something like this, firstly, I'm so sorry, because I've been through it and I know that it is not fun. If you know anyone who's going through it, please share it with them, because they really need to hear all this right now. I hope I was not all over the place in this video. Again, like I said, it's not the best, this is not my favorite topic, because it does, you know, it hurts a little. So this video has already gotten long enough, so I'll make another video with the side effects that I felt from the medications. Till then, guys, stay happy, stay healthy, and you know, if you liked the video, please comment, share, like, subscribe, all of that good stuff, and I'll see you guys in another video. Bye.